Hi, everybody. So, I'm going to take some time to talk with Michael about this third point in the center of the roadmap, which is get a spiritual practice. Recommending that we talk about getting a spiritual practice and relating it to meditation. But I want to review that with Michael because when I first started learning about nonviolence, I came into it with meditation at the same time. And I felt that it was like an in breath, out breath. My work at the Metta Center, the work that I was doing with nonviolence was the out breath, and the in breath was my practice of getting into my own mind, which I also felt was different from prayer, and it also felt as a something kind of essential to getting control of what my thinking process is, my mind, understanding, what's coming up for me. So I want to have Michael say these things. So, Michael, tell us about the new paradigm and the relationship to being mind, body, and spirit,
Yeah.
and then where, then why you say something like get a spiritual
Yeah.
practice, because those those words can be daunting to people and very misunderstood very
Yeah.
quickly.
On the other hand, Stephanie, to practice nonviolence successfully, that's pretty daunting
Yeah, that's
also.
true.
And I do believe that it's only learning to control impulses that arise
Mm.
in the mind that makes it possible to do that, to be nonviolent successfully. So, uh, as I say, for me, as you just mentioned, a spiritual practice means meditation. And even meditation will mean different things to different people. But as far as I know, and I've been in this field for quite a while, if it's really meaningful meditation or yoga, as in that sense of the word, as they say in India, then it does mean controlling the thought waves in the mind. Because, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, you may think nonviolence is a great idea. You may think you are nonviolent. But if somebody angers you, or you get righteous indignation about some injustice, which Lord knows there's plenty of that out there, unless you have a meditation practice, your nonviolence will fly out the window.
Can I challenge you on that for a second?
You can always challenge me
Okay.
politely.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a polite challenge. So, as a meditation practitioner or somebody that is again doing nonviolence with a spiritual practice,
Mhm.
I still get angry. I still, don't have all of my impulses
Yeah,
under control. So I don't want to set up a possibility of hypocrisy, saying that,
yeah,
well, if you're doing this, then you're not going to have these things. So how do you
yeah, yeah,
how do you explain that for
yeah.
people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm happy to say that the mystics from every tradition I've ever heard of, and I just
Hmm.
read a comment this morning from a French Catholic mystic,
Hmm.
they all will say, don't beat yourself up about these things rising up in the mind. It'll happen to everyone. The question is what to do about them. So the worst thing you can do is simply act on them. The other worst thing you can do is just repress them
Hmm.
and make believe to yourself and others that it's not there. But in between, there's this magical phenomenon with which both Gandhi and Martin Luther King speak of in very similar words, that if you take action against the thing that's annoying you or the person that's annoying you, but that action is nonviolent and creative, you will find, though in my experience you don't observe this firsthand, but you put two and two together later, you say, whoa, I did all this stuff, and you know what? I'm not angry anymore. So what happened to that anger? It got converted into creative action. The anger is primordially just an energy that wants you to act.
Mm.
And of course, we're conditioned to blurt it out in the form in which it expresses itself. And we think that that's, being real and legitimate. But actually, it's being unreal,
Mm.
because our real self is fully at peace, it's fully at one with others. And when we get angry at them, that's a kind of distraction, which leads me to a point I wanted to make about the relationship between meditation, as I understand it, you understand it, and nonviolence. Um, a friend of mine pointed out after he and I had both been meditating for about a decade, and it never dawned on me, but it just, whoa, immediately opened up my mind about this. That, as I was kind of hinting before, if I get angry at someone, in effect, that is a distraction. And what I've done in my meditation practice is every time I have a distraction, which is fairly common, I simply get my attention off that distraction, put it back on the thing that I'm meditating on, which in our case is an inspirational passage of some kind. So by the time someone angers me or scares me, I have practiced withdrawing attention from the distraction that anger and fear are over and over again. So that's what eventually makes nonviolence possible, even under provocations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Okay, so
that's a key insight.
there's another insight that I still haven't gotten you to say. If we are mind, body, and spirit,
Mm-hmm.
then in that paradigm, a spiritual practice means that we're practicing reminding ourselves that we are mind, body, and spirit, that spirit is primary. A spiritual practice means, to me, reminding yourself of who you are.
Yeah.
Whereas in the old paradigm, where we think we're basically body,
Mm-hmm.
possibly intellect.
If we're really smart.
So we do things over and over again that reinforce the idea that we're body, that it's what makes the body have pleasure and avoid pain. That's the most important thing. And that becomes a practice for us. So for me, it's about the switching of the paradigm means that it's reconditioning ourselves through
Mm-hmm.
regular practice to remind ourselves that we are not just these limited bodies, but that there's a part of us that's connected with everything else, and that we can touch into that
mm-hmm.
space, and it gives us insight into into how to be more effective with nonviolence.
I think I want to add two things by way of responding to that, Stephanie. One is we don't have to do this reminding act in so many words.
Yeah.
What we're doing with a spiritual practice is really we are quietening the mind so that spirit can be liberated, can express itself through us. So the other thing that we need to understand to make this all fit together is what a physicist from Washington State calls downward causality.
Amit Goswami.
Amit Goswami, yeah. So yeah, I am body, mind, and spirit, but they are very much a hierarchy. By working on body, I get nowhere, even for my bodily health. And we're bombarded with these commercial messages all the day that say, take care of your body, give your body this pleasure, that pleasure. And we're getting sicker and sicker. People are committing suicide at appalling rates. So what's really happening is that our spiritual being working through our mind is, the mystics would actually say, bringing body into existence. We don't have to go that far, but it's vastly more efficient to work for the benefit of releasing spirit. And that takes care of mind and body. Whereas trying to go about it the other way around, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I hope I've made that clear.
Okay. And the challenge, I suppose, is just for, there's a science, as you say, you're citing Goswami and others, but there's in the film The Third Harmony, we hear from Yakyaboni, and the Dalai Lama Scientist film is a good one to show how somebody who has been through tremendous violence is both committed deeply to nonviolence and
Hmm.
to a spiritual practice and to science.
Hmm.
And that more and more modern science is starting to affirm
Hmm.
the realities that meditation
Yep.
is extremely important for
Hmm.
our entire well-being. And
Hmm.
so I think this is one of the unique things of the Metta Center is that while we promote principled nonviolence,
Hmm.
which means that that nonviolence isn't just large numbers of people going out and refusing uh, to hit other people, but you still hate other people, or you uh, where we're trying the principled aspect is, well, you work on your hate as well as your
Hmm.
hitting. And what makes us unique, I think, is the same thing that sometimes principled nonviolence is referred to as a kind of, unfortunately, misconceived as a kind of religious
Hmm.
nonviolence. And there's nothing, religion is a whole nother topic,
Yeah.
but it's not. We're not talking about religion. We're talking about human, the whole human experience
Uh-huh.
is all. Which,
Yeah.
as Gandhi said, that uh, whoever tries to separate the political from the religious, let's use religious in quotes, from the spiritual, has no idea what
What religion actually
religion
means.
means or what
Yeah.
spirituality means. And so
Yeah.
these are integrated, and
Yeah.
that's what we try to do at the Metta Center. And,
Yeah.
it's unique in many ways. I think the
Hmm.
Kingian nonviolence, there's many people who have practiced Kingian nonviolence, and I
Hmm.
think they also start to take up some kind of a spiritual practice along the way as well.
Yeah.
Um, but this is, part 3 of the roadmap, and a very important one.
Yeah.
So,
Let me just add that all the major religions began with and still have at their core an intense spiritual commitment and a spiritual practice. Now, what happens in course of time is because it's daunting, as you said, people find ways of modifying it and basically, in the end, concealing it from themselves. Now, religious practice, like prayer, church going, and so forth, that still can be very helpful. It can build community, but as we know, it can also build hatred against other communities. So when we're talking about spiritual practice, it is something that can be and actually should be integrated with a religious tradition. A lot of us, like myself, we grew up where there was no spiritual practice in our religion as we knew it. So we had to feed that back in. And I think that's a very important contribution that we're making to religion and to the world.